Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Thomas. After my divorce, my daughter completely cut me off. She just believed what she was told and disappeared from my life. But 8 years later, she messaged me asking about her inheritance. So I made her do something she had refused to do for almost a decade. Let me walk you through how it all went down. I was married to Maria, my daughter's mother, for 19 years. And during those years, I wasn't just present, I was all in. I poured everything I had into that marriage, my time, my effort, my money, my loyalty. I wasn't perfect, but I never stepped out, never gave up, and I made sure my wife and daughter never had to worry about the basics. Clothes, school fees, birthday gifts, family trips. I made sure it all happened, even when it meant I had to sacrifice things for myself. Back then, life was good. Saturday mornings were for pancakes and cartoons. My daughter was a daddy's little girl through and through. I spoiled her. If she so much as hinted that she wanted something, I'd find a way to get it. Her mother, Maria, and I had what looked like a solid marriage. At least, that's what it seemed like from the outside. We functioned well as a team, especially in those early years. We made decisions like partners should. And even when we disagreed, we kept it civil. Things started to fall apart when my daughter was around 14 years old. At the time, I was trying to grow a business opportunity that I truly believed would set my family up for life. I had taken what you'd call a calculated risk. Only, it didn't go the way I hoped. It collapsed completely. And just like that, everything I had worked so hard for was gone. I lost nearly all my savings. Worse than that, I ended up in debt. At first, I didn't tell anyone. I thought I could fix it myself. So, I kept the stress bottled up, pretending everything was fine on the outside. I'd leave home early, come back late, digging through whatever options I had left, try to pull us back to stability. But it became too heavy to carry alone. The sleepless nights, the constant worry, the shame, it started to affect everything. Eventually, I sat Maria down and told her the truth. I explained everything, laid out the numbers, the decisions, and the consequences. And she just stared at me in silence. That silence said more than words could have. From that day on, something changed between us. I couldn't tell if the wall that suddenly came up was because of the financial failure or if there had been cracks before that I didn't see. Maybe this was just the final straw. I don't know. But what I do know is that after that conversation, Maria changed. She didn't yell or accuse me. It was more like she slowly removed herself from our marriage without actually leaving. She'd spend more time at work, go on weekend trips with friends, and when she was home, she barely spoke to me unless it was about logistics, groceries, the bills, our daughter's school events. The warmth we used to have was gone. To anyone on the outside looking in, we still looked like a happy, stable family. I knew we weren't okay, but I held on. Not for me, and probably not even my wife Maria. I held on for our daughter. I didn't want her to grow up in a broken home. Didn't want her to carry the weight of watching her parents fall apart. So I kept showing up, even when it felt like I was the only one trying. I thought if I just held out long enough, we could find our way back. But looking back now, I realized that was the beginning of the end. By the time my daughter turned 17, things between us just didn't feel the same anymore, but I didn't understand it back then. Looking back now, I can trace when it started, though at the time, I brushed it off as teenage mood swings. I thought she was just growing up, learning independence, trying to define herself like most teens do. I didn't want to crowd her. I didn't want to be one of those dads who hovered and smothered their kids when they just needed space. So, I gave her room, thinking she'd circle back when she was ready. I didn't realize she was being pulled further away from me on purpose. Maria, my wife at the time, had started doing something I didn't notice until it was too late. She never came out and told our daughter not to trust me or not to love me. No, she was too smart for that. She did it in passing comments, little digs that sounded harmless, but carried poison. You know how your father gets, she would say when something didn't go as planned. If he couldn't afford something our daughter wanted, Maria would say, "Well, you know how your dad is with money." She didn't raise her voice or argue in front of our daughter, but she made sure to plant quiet doubts. seeds that, over time, grew into distance. It hurt in ways I didn't even have words for. I'd come home and try to talk to my daughter like we used to, and she'd barely meet my eyes. Now I'd ask how her day went, and she'd shrug or mumble. Fine. That was it. The sparkle and the warmth were gone. And I didn't know what I had done to lose it. Still, I kept telling myself, give her time. I had no idea that every time I let something slide, Maria was using the silence to reshape who I was in our daughter's mind. She turned me from the man who used to tuck her in at night into some unreliable, emotionally unstable figure. I was the reason my daughter didn't always get what she wanted. It was like watching your own child fade from you, not because she stopped loving you, but because someone was slowly teaching her to unlove you. After losing everything in a business gamble, I'd spent years clawing my way back up, quietly and patiently. By the time my daughter left for college, I had started to breathe again. It wasn't complete peace, but I had finally started to believe that the storm had passed. I'd paid off most of the loans. Business was showing signs of life again. Then one day my wife, Maria, filed for divorce. She didn't come to me for a conversation. She didn't ask for counseling. She went straight to a lawyer and dropped the paperwork on me like a hammer. Maria didn't just want to separate. She wanted to scorch the earth on her way out. In her court filings, she described me as if I were some kind of monster. She told the judge I was angry that I had emotionally shut both her and my daughter out. I was cold and couldn't connect with our daughter, and I was reckless with our family's well-being. It was like she rewrote history and handed it to the court as if it were fact. I remember reading those accusations over and over, trying to make sense of them. I wasn't perfect, but I knew what I had given. But none of that was in the report. Not a single line about the years I gave everything to hold us together. She even went as far as asking for full custody of our daughter, as if I hadn't spent years being present, active, and involved. That's when it became clear. This wasn't just about separation, it was war. And I had to defend not only my rights, but my name. So I fought back. I brought in every photo, email, text, calendar invite, and receipt I could find that showed my involvement in my daughter's life. Every birthday party I organized. Every doctor's appointment I attended. Every parent-teacher conference. I wasn't going to let them erase me from the story. And thankfully, the court saw through at least some of the lies. They didn't give her full custody. They recognized that I had been there, even when things were rough. The real damage wasn't about money or property. It was the silence that followed. My daughter stopped speaking to me. She didn't ask me what happened or want to hear my side. She believed what she had been told. And just like that, I was a ghost. I called and wrote to her. Letters, emails, left voicemails. But there was nothing. No reply. No curiosity. Just a wall of silence. And when she blocked me, I realized she had made up her mind. Losing her was the hardest part of it all. And if I'm being honest, I still don't know what hurt more, Maria's betrayal or my daughter's decision to walk away without even asking why. After the court papers were signed and her mother went her way, my daughter followed. She chose to believe whatever her mother had told her. And to this day, I still don't know what exactly that was. But I tried. God knows I tried. I sent letters, not just one or two, but dozens. Handwritten, typed, emailed. Some long, some short. I left voice messages. Other times I pleaded, not to win her over, not to make her take my side in the mess between me and her mom, but just to get her to listen. Just to get her to give me 5 minutes, one conversation, to hear the truth. You don't have to agree with me, I said in one message, just hear me out. But it didn't matter. Every effort hit a wall. I was blocked on her phone and on social media. It was like I died, and she buried me herself. It's hard to describe the pain. People talk about heartbreak after divorce or financial loss. I've known both. But losing your child when you're still alive, knowing they're out there, breathing, living, laughing, and choosing not to have you in their life, that's a pain that sits in your chest and doesn't move. I didn't know how else to deal, so I did the only thing I could. I started writing everything down. I made a digital journal on Google Keep. I treated it like a time capsule. I logged every letter I'd written, every message I'd left, every single emotion I couldn't say to her face. I wrote down memories of us, birthdays, park visits, inside jokes. And one day, I sat down and wrote her a long, detailed message. The kind that takes hours to write. I poured everything into it. Timelines, receipts, explanations. I didn't try to paint myself as perfect. I just told the truth. Every page was an invitation. Whenever you're ready, here's my side. She never read it. Eventually, I had to accept it. She'd never come around. Maybe the version of me her mother had constructed had become too permanent. So I stopped begging. I stopped hoping for replies. I didn't stop loving her, but I had to stop holding my breath. And with nothing left to give to someone who didn't want anything from me, I turned my attention to something that might actually respond. My work. I poured myself into my business. I rebuilt it from scratch. I showed up early, stayed late, and slowly the cracks began to fill. The money started coming in again. But this time, I didn't have a family waiting at home to spend it on. So I invested. In stocks, in property, in ventures. I told myself if I couldn't build a legacy in love, maybe I could at least build one in numbers. By the 5th year of her silence, I made a decision to remove her as a beneficiary from my estate. She didn't want me in her life. I wasn't even sure she'd attend my funeral if I dropped dead tomorrow. And as painful as that was, I had to plan accordingly. I told myself, if she ever comes back, we can revisit this. But until then, my legacy won't sit waiting in the dark for someone who refuses to even turn on the light. For years, I kept trying to rebuild, but even with success coming back into my life, there was still an emptiness. I didn't talk about it much, but it was there. You can have money in the bank, you can sleep in peace, but at the end of the day, a quiet house and a quiet heart don't always mean contentment. I wasn't actively searching for someone new. Truthfully, I thought that chapter was closed for good. I had accepted that some things in life just don't come back, not the way they once were. But as life would have it, something unexpected found its way to me. And I say something, but I mean someone. She came into my life quietly. She was a widow, around my age, with no children of her own. The first time we spoke, it was like two people who had been through enough to know that peace was more valuable than perfection. There was no rush, no pressure. And somehow, those small moments started to matter. She treated me like I was a blessing in her life, not a burden to be fixed or a project to be pitted. That kind of affection is rare. And I knew enough by then to recognize its worth. With her, life felt easy. She didn't need grand gestures or apologies for a past I couldn't change. She just needed me to be present, and I could do that. In her presence, I wasn't the man defined by a failed marriage or a broken relationship with his child. I was simply Thomas, and being seen that way made me feel whole again. Not because she completed me, but because she reminded me that I still had something good to offer, that I wasn't finished. It had been 8 long years since I last heard from my daughter. 8 years since she chose her mother's version of the story over even giving me the dignity of explaining mine. So you can imagine the jolt I felt when, one quiet afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from an unsaved number. I almost ignored it, thinking it was another scam or some random sales pitch, but something made me open it. It was her. Her message didn't start with "Hi" or "How have you been?" No, it was direct. She said she wanted to talk about her mother, who, as it turns out, was very sick. Then she wanted to talk about her inheritance. After nearly a decade of silence, not a single question about my life, my health, or how I'd been coping all these years. We arranged to meet. I picked a quiet cafe. When I saw her walk in, my heart thudded in my chest. She looked like her mother, but gone was the warm little girl who used to run into my arms. This version of my daughter was guarded, stiff, like she was meeting a stranger. We barely got through basic pleasantries before she dropped the real reason she came. Looking me straight in the eye, she said, "Will you help for once in your life?" That one sentence, it knocked the air out of me. For once in my life? I wanted to scream. Did she forget that I drained myself dry trying to keep our family afloat when her mother emotionally checked out? But I didn't yell or argue. Instead, I chuckled. then looked at her and said, "You blocked me 8 years ago. I left you a message back then. Unblock me. Read it." She got defensive right away, her voice rising with frustration. She accused me of trying to score points, of being petty now that they needed something from me. I let her vent without matching her anger. I didn't defend myself with more words. I'd already said everything I needed to say years ago. So I calmly repeated, "Read the message. That's all I'm asking." And then she left. I didn't know if she'd actually go through with it immediately. I wanted her to read one message in particular that I'd written for her. It laid out everything. The timeline, the decisions, the sacrifices, the truth behind the distance that crept into our home, and the ways her mother quietly poisoned her view of me. I didn't hold back in that message. I included screenshots, receipts, references, and even voice memos from people who had witnessed our family falling apart from the outside. I didn't write it to win her over. I wrote it so that one day, if she ever came back, the truth would be waiting. A few days passed. I heard nothing. Then one evening my doorbell rang. It was her. No walls or attitude this time. As soon as I opened the door, she broke down. Years of pain, misunderstanding, and bitterness came pouring out through her tears. She sobbed, "I don't know what to say. I thought you didn't care." I looked at her, steady and quiet, and said, "You believed what you were told. Now believe what you saw." We sat down together. She told me she had read everything. Then she went to her mother and confronted her with the message, the receipts, and the journal entries. And to her shock, her mother didn't deny any of it. That realization shattered something in her. She looked at me, eyes full of regret, and said, "I'm so sorry, Dad. I wasted all these years hating you. I want to make it up to you. I want us to have what we lost." That moment, it didn't undo the pain, but it opened the door. It gave me back something I'd thought I lost forever. Now this is where things get complicated, and I've been stuck. After 8 long years of silence, pain, and unanswered messages, my daughter is back in my life now. And it's not perfect, of course not. But there's something real growing again between us. She's asked for forgiveness, and I gave it, because truth be told, I never stopped hoping she'd come back. I never stopped loving her. So yeah, even with all that time gone, there's still hope. But now comes the real question. Maria, the woman I was married to for 19 years, the mother of my daughter, pushed me when I was already falling. The one who looked me in the face, saw me struggling, and still twisted the knife. She knew how close my daughter and I were. She knew. And still, she went ahead and poisoned that bond. Turned me into a stranger in my own child's eyes. Lied, twisted the story, and made sure her version stuck. Now she's sick. And my daughter, well, of course, she's scared and wants her mother to be okay. She wants help. She's asking me to do something financially, but I don't even fully know yet. All I know is I'm standing at a crossroads. I'd love to say I'm some bigger man, that I've healed and moved on, and it doesn't affect me anymore, but that would be a lie. I rebuilt my life, yes. I started over, yes. But some wounds don't fully close. Some betrayals echo long after the damage is done. And when I think about Maria and remember how cold she was during the divorce, something in me still tightens. I'm not angry the way I used to be, but I haven't forgotten. I don't wish her harm, but I also don't know if I owe her anything. After everything she took from me, am I really supposed to show up now like nothing happened? That's where I am. That's the moral dilemma. I've forgiven my daughter because I know she was misled. But her mother? That's harder. That's messier. So I'm turning this over to you, listening, the ones who followed this story all the way here. What do you think I should do? Do I forgive her? Do I step in and help, knowing what she did to me? Or do I move on and keep the peace I've finally managed to find, hoping my daughter understands? Let me know in the comments. And while you're sharing your thoughts, go ahead and like and share this video with someone who needs to hear this. Maybe they're dealing with something similar. Maybe they're stuck between letting go and holding on. Either way, thanks for being here with me.